There are moments in our politics where something happens between two countries, two nations that have lived side by side, traded together, defended each other's borders, shared a continent in peace for longer than most alliances in human history. And you realize we may be crossing a line we can't easily walk back from. What happened between the United States and Canada in the last 72 hours is one of those moments. And I want to talk to you about it, not with the heat that cable gives you, not with the spin, but with the kind of honesty that I think this situation demands. Because what's unfolding right now isn't just a trade dispute. It's a fracture in the most successful economic partnership the modern world has ever produced. And the choices being made on both sides of that border are going to reach into your household, into your grocery bill, into the cost of building materials and farm equipment and everyday goods that Americans depend on. So let me walk you through exactly what happened, why it matters, and what I think is coming next. Because if you understand the details, you'll see this a whole lot differently than what a 60-second cable segment can give you. Let's start with how we got here. The United States and Canada don't just trade with each other. They are woven into each other's economies in a way that most people don't fully appreciate. Nearly 72% of Canada's goods exports go to the United States. And we're not talking about luxury items. We're talking about energy, raw materials, auto parts, agricultural products, the things that keep factories running and shelves stocked on both sides of the border. For decades, that relationship was governed by trade agreements. First NAFTA, which I signed in the 1990s, and then the USMCA, which was negotiated during the first Trump term. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, no trade deal is perfect. Canada does have protectionist policies in certain sectors. Their dairy supply management system is complicated. Their provincial liquor boards have restricted American alcohol in ways that are genuinely frustrating for U.S. producers. Those are real grievances, and any honest conversation about this has to acknowledge that. But here's what matters. We had a framework for resolving those grievances. We had a process. We had the USMCA. And what's happened over the past year and a half is that instead of working through that process, we've watched it get dismantled piece by piece through unilateral tariff actions that have now escalated into something neither side may be able to control. On July 20th, President Trump signed 3 proclamations invoking Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, the Smoot-Hawley Act, to impose 50% tariffs on a range of Canadian goods. Now, I need you to understand something about Section 338, because this is where the story gets really important. This provision has never been used to impose tariffs before, not once. Not by FDR, not by Eisenhower, not by Reagan, not by me, not by any president in the modern era. The Congressional Research Service confirmed it earlier this year. Section 338 may have been referenced as leverage in negotiations back in the 1930s and 1940s, but no president has ever actually pulled the trigger on it until now. And the tariffs it authorizes are the maximum allowed under that statute, 50%. They cover 554 Canadian tariff lines, roughly $20 billion in annual imports. We're talking about cement, furniture, clothing, dairy products, wine, hockey sticks, fishing rods, and here's the part that should concern everyone. These tariffs apply even to goods that qualify under the USMCA. That's a first. In previous rounds, USMCA compliant products were carved out. That protection is gone. The administration argued that Canada discriminates against American autos, alcohol, and dairy compared to what it offers other trading partners. And I'll grant you, there's a kernel of truth in the auto argument. Canada's retaliatory 25% tariff on U.S. automobiles does single out American products without applying the same burden to imports from other countries. That's a legitimate trade complaint. But here's what I keep coming back to. Canada's retaliatory tariffs exist because we imposed tariffs on Canada first. We started this cycle. And now we're using a 96-year-old law that's never been tested in court, that has no implementing regulations, no judicial precedent. We're using that to escalate further. That should give every American pause. Now, I care about the people who watch these videos. I genuinely do. And I know that if you're here, you're someone who takes this seriously. You want to understand what's actually happening, not just get a headline. But I'm going to tell you something directly. What you're getting from cable coverage on this is not enough. They don't have the time or the incentive to dig into the real numbers, the tariff lines, the sector breakdowns, the timeline of what was offered and what was rejected. The Blue Bill newsletter does. It lays out the kind of detail that changes how you understand a story like this, and it takes about 5 minutes. I read it myself, and I'm telling you, go check the Blue Bill newsletter. Because if you don't have those details, you're only seeing half the picture. Here's where things went from bad to worse. The tariffs were set to take effect on August 19th. Hours before the deadline, President Trump paused them for 3 days. He went on social media and said, and I'm paraphrasing, that subject to the finalization of documents, the United States and Canada had a deal. Prime Minister Carney confirmed that intensive discussions had been taking place and that substantial progress had been made. For about 48 hours, it looked like both sides might find an off-ramp. And then, late Friday night, last night, it fell apart. Carney suspended the negotiations. He called his negotiators back to Ottawa. He said that last-minute changes in the American proposed terms were, in his words, unfair and uneconomic, and that they called into question the reliability of any deal. Now, I want to be fair about this. We don't know every detail of what those last-minute changes were. Carney referenced the auto sector and Canada's ability to maintain other trade agreements. He said Canada had been willing to drop its remaining retaliatory tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos, and to encourage provinces to put American alcohol back on shelves, but that Washington's final demands went too far. His words were, they asked too much and offered too little. And at 12:01 this morning, the 50% tariffs went into effect. $20 billion in Canadian goods are now subject to those duties. And Canada has announced it will retaliate dollar for dollar, with its own tariffs taking effect September 8th, targeting American steel, dairy, appliances, agricultural equipment, pulp and paper, and electronics. Let me tell you what concerns me most about this. It's not just the economic damage, although that damage is real and it's coming. It's the institutional precedent. When I was president, we had disagreements with our trading partners, serious disagreements. But we worked through established frameworks. We used the WTO. We used bilateral negotiations within agreed upon structures. We didn't reach back 96